Hi, Will, and it's
Yep.
great to get to speak with you.
Talk to you too.
And yeah, I just received an email from you, which was well, it was quite humorous, really, but it was it was so nice just to realize that um, from listening to the conversation I had with Rika Markel, that everything clicked into place, and so. Would be great to have a conversation about that and for you to, let us know about your life experience and everything that led to realization.
The first memory I have in the early childhood, or do you want me to talk about Rika first, or just go back and start?
Yeah, start from early childhood because it gives the context to everything then.
Sure. I had a situation where I was spanked profoundly as a young boy, and at that point in time, I was in a state of bliss most of the time. Anywhere, I loved the family, they loved me, everything's fine,
Mm.
and all of a sudden, that changed everything. And I
Yes.
started realizing that these people are more powerful, they're bigger than I am, and I better learn how to get along. And so I
Yeah.
became the obedient son, if you will.
Mm.
And from that point on, there was a fear of being rejected or the punishment,
Mm.
all that stuff. So all through my life was this knowing how to navigate with people
Mm.
and make sure that I was making sure they were happy. Now,
Yes.
my whole thing in life was two things were one was I hope you're happy, but hey, look at me. Because the ego was kicking in. It's like, aren't I something? And I'm not. I mean, I am, but I'm not. But anyway,
Yes.
and so uh, when I got into my teenage years, I started realizing I started rebelling like most teenagers do. And I remember distinctly memories coming now of sitting on the couch and I was watching a football game or something, baseball, I don't know. And my dad wanted me to do some yard work. And
Mm.
I just sat there and I didn't, I mean, now this is a courageous move for me in my life because I didn't want to get hit, but by the same token, I was going to sit in that chair. I was not going to do anything. I was rebelling like crazy. And so, yeah, he said something about you'll never be anything and all that kind of stuff. And I said, and it, and it, it, it just sort of deepened the feeling of separation.
Mm.
And then I got involved. Well, I went through college, and that was okay. Although I never felt part of the group. In
Mm.
fact, I didn't feel part of the group most of my life,
Mm.
and because I just knew there was something more. There was something I couldn't figure out.
Mm.
And when I was doing a film project in the early '70s, well, mid '70s, and I was going through some real challenges. I had been fired from that. I didn't was fired. I quit the job. I fired the person who said it. Uh, and then after that, my girlfriend, who I thought I would eventually marry, she dumped me, and because the job was kind of prestigious,
Yes.
not anymore. So, yeah. Anyway, long story short, I was kind of lost, and I
Mm.
was telling this friend of mine who was editing this film. I said, "You ever feel like there's more to your life than you're experiencing, or something like that?" And he said, "What do you mean?" I said, "I feel like there's more for me to do." He said, "Have you ever heard of the inner peace movement?" And I said, "Is there such a thing?" And he said, "Yeah, it's groups of people will meet all around the country." And this guy was enthusiastic for 3 days in a row.
Mm.
So whatever he was doing, I wanted to find out more about because
Yes.
I was looking for that same kind of enthusiasm.
Mm.
And uh, long story short, he tells me about uh, that I'm a soul with a body, not a body with a soul. And that literally flipped another switch because all of a sudden I realized I'm not this body. And that was a great relief. in many respects. However, I knew just being a soul didn't mean that I was that I could just escape into spirituality or whatever you want. And so I wanted to figure out a way to make it practical and create some income for myself. So I went through some training, and it was absolutely remarkable. And we were helping quite a few people. But the one thing he said was, you have spiritual helpers or master souls working with you. You can call them angels, or you can call them messengers of God, messengers of love. It doesn't really matter. The name is only a name, but the experience of them is incredible. And so there was a counseling where I had to go. I said, well, and he said, oh, by the way, you can learn how to communicate with them. And I went, really? How do I do that? And he said, well, we have this little orientation profile, and you find out more about yourself in 1 hour, and then you learn how to communicate with your guidance. And I said, sign me up. What do I have to do? I got to find a consultant in the area that'll schedule you. I said, good. If they have time this afternoon. I mean, I was in a hurry. So I went home. I locked the door of my apartment. I said, I don't care what happens. Just make sure I get across that bridge and see that young lady and tomorrow for the counseling. And I did it. It was an experience that changed my life because it was not a theory. It was a moving experience, the best way I can describe it.
Yes.
And moving. And so
is that when the intuitive capability started to arise for you? Because you mentioned it's been there for most of your life.
Yes. Well, it has been for most of my life. It's just I had a name to put to it. One of the things they talk about is different gifts or spiritual gifts. And one is prophecy, which is inner knowing, vision, which is visualization, intuition, which is clairaudience.
Yes.
And the gift of feeling, which is psychometry. And we're all psychic, and
yes.
psychic just means breath of God.
Yes.
And so it's not big mystery. Everybody has psychic experiences. I think one of the people you were talking about said she heard somebody calling her name. She thought it might be the tree.
Yes.
And remember that? Well, that was probably her guidance. And it was. We have all these psychic experiences all the time. Long story short, I moved away from all of that. I got married, had 2 wonderful kids, had 2 boys, and but then there was this kind of a pressure. Still had this calling to do something spiritually or create some kind of programs, and the universe was giving me awareness. It was giving me different ideas of things to do, and one of them was, ironically, Awakening Awareness Now, and that was in '83. And there was this urge to get this done and to listen and see what happened. And yet at the same time, I still had to make money. I was in sales.
Yes.
And long story short, I had ended marriage, and it was the most difficult and absolutely painful thing that ever happened to me. And so then got back involved with the program and did some things. And I always had a dream in 1988. And this is back when personal development was starting. Well, maybe not starting, but I was catching up with it. I used to listen to all the Nightingale Summit tapes when I was in sales and going from one place to another. And that was really, really helpful. And so I decided to do, and I don't know where it came from, but I thought, I'm going to write down what I want my life to be like. Because I've always operated on the theory that Richard Bach wrote about in Jonathan Livingston Seagull. I don't know if you've read that book or not.
Yes, I have, yes.
Okay. He gets with these master goals. And the master goals, he asks him how to go faster and how to be this. And the master goal says, Jonathan, begin with the idea you have already arrived. And I thought, wow. And so all of this came back to me. when I was beginning with the idea of already arrived. In fact, I used that in speeches. But I created out a scenario of if I was going to get married again, what kind of woman it was going to be, if I was going to get a job, what did I really want to do? And I decided I really wanted to be one of those speakers and one of those teachers, if you will, because I believed I had some things to say. And within 2 years, I was 2 or 3 years, I found somebody that I really loved. I was hired to be a vice president of corporate training and go all over the country motivating the sales force. And that was phenomenal. I mean, they were paying me to do what I loved, and it was exciting. And so anyway, those are just some of the highlights. And then my wife became ill, and this was after I retired. And so we went through the process. Myself and her daughter were the main caregivers. And she knew what I knew. She wasn't going to die. In fact, she even asked, "Why can't I die?" She was ready to go.
Yes.
And so after she left, I realized she had just given me the greatest gift of my life, which was unconditional love. Because as a caretaker, you know that there's nothing to get back. And true love is one where you're giving without any expectation of anything in return. And so that's what I experienced with her, was just this unconditional love for her beingness, doing everything we could to help her be comfortable. And I opened the door one morning and I went, "Oh, she's gone." And that was the best. That was a tremendous gift for me. And it a lot of people didn't understand why I wasn't sad. And, I couldn't be sad because I knew she was fine.
Yes.
There was no doubt. That was never part of my vocabulary after about the early 70s, mid 70s. And I guess that's when I was really starting to distance myself from other people who were still living in duality. And so to make a long story shorter, I may have said that before, but the other gift she gave me was the freedom to go out and start searching again. And even though I had this awareness of things, I still knew. Actually, what happened was I listened to releasetechnique.com. They have a program a success program on how to release. And I started releasing, and I was on my way to a camp. And I had a 150-mile drive, and I just was releasing everything I could think of going up to that camp. By the time I hit the ground of that camp, I was hiring cover. And that was Lester Levenson's program.
Yes. Yeah.
And then I found out that what he did was to release for 100 and something days or however long it was. And he was free. He got really free, self-realized. And I thought, wow, I want to do that. So I took some courses from Release Technique, and then that drifted over to Hale, Dwoskin and the Sedona method, and met some beautiful people along the way, and have a great releasing partner. And then, and I'm not exactly sure, you were on a podcast with Hale back in March of 22, I believe.
Yes.
And that's when I first saw you and was kind of listening, was a little bit aware, but it didn't strike me that much. And I wasn't really as serious about the search as I was after March 30th. On March 30th, I have a defibrillator and a pacemaker, and I had a heart attack almost. And the defibrillator fortunately worked and shocked me about 4 times. And that's when I realized, man, I got to get going. And one of the things that happened in that, it's coming back to me. I'm yelling expletive deleted towards the 911 operator. It's like, and I wasn't yelling at him. I was just yelling. And because every time it shocks you, just in case you don't know, it hurts, and it's scary.
Mm.
And so I propped myself up on an elbow, and I looked up, and I could hear the sirens coming. And I looked up to the ceiling, and I just yelled. I just yelled, "Not now!"
Mm.
And all of a sudden, everything calmed down, and it was really neat. By the time the paramedics got there, I said, "How you doing, guys?" And we had a nice conversation. My son is a paramedic out in San Francisco, and we talked about that for a while. And I felt wonderful. I mean, I was a little shaky physically, but
Mm.
I didn't feel bad at all.
Mm.
And but I did. I had three days before the surgery, and that's when I started realizing I need to start being real serious about this and not play games. And so that's how it all got started. And I read. Oh, let's see. There was a book called Oneness by John Grevin.
Oh,
And,
yes.
okay, and then there was a recording by John Grevin,
Mm-hmm.
and he was talking Harris, is it? But anyway, he was being interviewed,
Yes.
and he was talking about John Wheeler
Mm.
and how John Wheeler keeps beating the same drum and is saying the same things. And I thought, well, I'll find out what John Wheeler's doing.
Mm.
So I listened to John Wheeler's tapes. I'm going. He says at one point in time, it's real simple. You are what you're already looking for. And I went, holy cow. And I had been listening to Sailor Bob for a long time
Mm.
because these were tools that were helping this body mind
Mm.
figure things out again. And I bet I heard him say the same thing 5 or 6 times. But when I heard John Wheeler say it, it's like a light went on.
Mm.
I'm scrolling through YouTube looking for another John Wheeler tape, and there you are, and it says Rika Markel experiences self-realization in a conversation. This is like 2 in the morning. And I went, what?
Mm-hmm.
And so I got up and I listened to the recording. Rika was phenomenal. And your illustration of the invitations and the the one that really got me was where the mind's the sports commentator, because I was doing that early in life.
Yeah,
And
it's so funny, really.
yeah, it was. It's like, wow, I got a new name for it. I don't have to call it the mind, and just call it the commentator. The commentator's back. And so that was my experience. And what what the mind or the commentator doesn't realize is how subtle this is,
Mm.
how subtle awareness is. I
Mm.
mean, it's effortless. Like
Yes.
you said, effortless awareness.
Yes.
And so that's where I am. I feel really good. I've never felt better. Got some physical issues show up every once in a while, but that's okay. It's just okay. Everything's okay. So,
It's amazing the way there's that sequence in the way the self reveals itself, because the as you were saying, you listened to Sailor Bob quite a lot, and then there was some resonance with John Wheeler, and then listening to the conversation with Rika, just brought an end to it. But the way it happens for each of us is like that, really, because there's a sequence and it looks as though we're the one who's finding these things, but they're actually being delivered to us in that sequence.
I never thought of it from that point of view. That's good. That's really good. Wow, that takes the ego out of it, doesn't it? Just say goodbye.
Yeah.
It's true. The universe was looking out for me.
Mm.
And I know that I know my team. I call it my team. I know the team with which this body works.
Mm.
It was leading the way, so to speak.
Yes.
The thing that bothered me, or the thing I was concerned about, or almost literally to the point of being afraid of, was what I have to give up guidance.
Yeah.
And so I'm asking them, tell me about oneness.
Mm.
And the 4 words were, there is no other. And it's like we're all one.
Yes.
There is no separation.
Mm.
There's no difference. And I was like, wow.
Mm.
And then when you told Rika to do that technique, I could literally see an energy. I could see the energy, and I could see what I was trying to be,
Mm.
and it wasn't going to get there.
Sure.
This that was never going to happen until I recognized I am that what I'm looking for. Because otherwise, it says look within, and I thought I was looking within.
Yes. There was an element of determination as well, though. You know, when you had the incident, you know, the medical incident, where you just said not now, and that was, you sort of drew a line there, and that was your infinite nature coming through, saying not now, because it was just saying, you know, it needs to be available as this opportunity, and that's exactly how it was. It was like I was just told that, well, the way you just said that, it was just so uncompromising. You know, there wasn't any alternative. You just said not now, and that was it, really.
Like, I don't care what you do. I'm not leaving until I get this done.
Yeah.
Because I don't really want to come back, to be real honest with you. And I know I speak in duality. I don't mean to, but let's see. It's becoming more apparent to me that we had, before I was born, before this body was born, there was a consent to have this team with me.
Yes.
And there was a consent for all the different people in my life to show up and do exactly what they did. And there was consent for the recognition of that. And there was consent for, oh, blessed my aging mind. It was just, oh, I knew going in, I'm going back to confusion. And there, because we live in a sea of thoughts and feelings, most of which are confused.
Yes.
And even things that we think are love are really not love. And when Lester said, the real you is happiness with no sorrow, I thought he was joking. I thought he was, there's got to be come on, what's the punchline? And it's really true. What I'm experiencing now after Rika's call is that happiness. Sometimes great, like the sunshine. Sometimes there's a cloud. Clouds have showed up, and I love it, the fact that you told people in your conversations they were having the same troubles that I was having in terms of sometimes thinking I lost it.
Yes.
Like right after you said, "Hey, would you like to have a conversation for my YouTube channel?" I went, "Yes, this is going to be wonderful." The next day, oh, I can't do that. I mean, it's just like the clouds showed up. It just it rained like crazy.
Yes. Yeah, the mind comes back to try to distract you in some way, but yeah, that happens. It happens most intensely following realization, and then it sort of tails off. So yeah, it's quite interesting the way you describe that.
Dissipating. I think that's the best word to say. It's just,
yes, exactly. That's perfect. Yeah.
And yeah, it's just dissipating. It's losing its. I've taken back. Let's see. I've taken back my consent.
Yes.
Canceled the tickets. I'm not going these rides anymore. I don't. And I think the real joy is that I can experience duality. That's not a problem. But that's not who I am.
Yes.
And that has been really, really helpful. And hopefully some of what we're saying here today is being helpful to other people. Because
yes,
one thing I'd like to say to all the people that you've had conversations with, every one of them has helped me. There's been maybe it's a whole thing, maybe it's just a sentence, but these fragments are awakening continually, and it's just absolutely beautiful.
That's great. And the way you describe your own process is that actually the knowingness was already there. And when you look back, you see that it's always been there. But it's just that there was this, kind of overlaying of something which made it appear, as consenting to limitation, really, when already, all along there has only ever been unity.
Yes. And I think Hale was the first one that introduced the concept that there's no really a me. And the first one for me to hear.
Yes. Yeah.
And wow. The commentator wanted to argue about that for a while. So finally it's like, oh, he's right. And I've heard Hale say this so many times about your just awareness and awareness becoming aware of itself. And I'm going, why didn't that click? And the only answer to me is I wasn't ready.
Mm.
And when I was, what's the old line? When the student's ready, the teacher appears.
Yes.
I was ready, and you showed up, and I was presented. I don't know how to. I don't know your language very well. I just felt we're having a conversation.
Yeah, that's amazing though. Just it's everyone's experience, really. The whole thing of hearing the words. We've heard those words. You are already what you're looking for. You are already infinite awareness. But there is just a point where it registers somehow, and that's something you can't really determine. But in a way, it's just seeing the simplicity, which is that realization is already there. The only thing which makes it appear as though we're not already realized is that we're still listening to the mind, because the thoughts are being delivered into the mind, and those thoughts are saying things like, I'm not realized. And if we take delivery of those thoughts and then we act on them, then we're on this little ride where it appears as though we're not self-realized. But it's only because we've, as you say, bought the ticket and we're on that little ride. But actually, we're already self-realized, and so is everyone.
I think that was the more challenging thing for me, was canceling the tickets or declining the invitation, because I had created a concept of the mind, that the mind was really, really powerful, and of course wasn't. And then all of a sudden I'm realizing I'm taking my power back.
Yes.
And I remember listening to Larry Crane from releasetechnique.com. And he was saying, well, who's in charge of your mind? Let me know when the manager of your mind shows up and we'll talk to him. But if you're going to, it's like, whoa, how do you can do that, fire the mind, So that was interesting.
That's great. Well, thanks so much. It's been amazing, really. And it's we were saying before we started recording just the way there's such a diverse range of people, where there's realization and to have these kind of conversations. But yeah, we can't really determine, what is going to be, helping people. But it is that it's just speaking from that authenticity, when there is realization, for everyone is speaking from their own inner knowing, and it just makes it, well, it just makes it accessible, because you can see that there isn't anything in terms of behavior or beliefs or anything which is an obstacle to realization.
Yes. And it's like, so I think celebrate the challenges. That's
Yes.
what I started. I was in a real deep depression after the marriage broke up, and one day or one night, I can't remember, but it just struck me to say thank you.
Yes.
And I just said, you know, the language was, um, thanks for this challenge. I really appreciate it because I know I'm going to overcome it. I
Yes.
know I'm going to conquer it, and I know I'm going to be able to help other people going through same thing.
Yes.
And that's what all of these programs, whether it's New Spiritual Horizons or releasetechnique.com or the Sedona Method, all of those programs have been enormously helpful. I see them as, to a certain extent, as stepping stones.
Yes.
I think there's truth. Francisco's famous line was, there's truth in all things.
Mm.
No one thing has all the truth.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
Really resonated.
Yes.
And it does now. It's like there's truth here, there's truth there.
Yeah.
And we're all connected to that truth, I guess. That's
definitely. Yes. I think
residing.
sorry, the recognition you had, Will, is that everything really is an opportunity, because if we're having, if we're having worldly experiences, so, getting married, having children, a successful career, then that's a worldly kind of success. But the way people interpret things when the worldly experience dissolves and we have challenges, that's when the spiritual opportunity emerges.
Exactly.
And it's, as you say, it's recognizing the opportunity that's within every experience, because either it's in a worldly sense, which is fine, or there's a kind of inner opportunity. And you were saying, with having the cardiac issue, that was really the greatest blessing, because it brought that total clarity. It was just completely uncompromising, and you just said, not now. And that just determined from your infinite nature that it was the end of the game.
The ironic thing to me was there was a powerful shift, because I'm not real good at names. And I can tell you right now, every RN, every nurse that worked on me while I was there, they were phenomenal. But it was surprised this mind that it's like, how do you remember their name? I was asking myself almost. It's like, that's who they are, and they're important, and their name is important because that's how they see themselves, I guess. But I thought it was always important to now remember people's names and treat them with respect, because they're all the same. They're like talking to myself. In fact, one of the things that happened prior to this, the commentators started practicing. Let's rehearse a little bit. What are you going to say? I started laughing, and I said, I'm literally talking to myself to a certain extent. Or as Lester says, talk about you, talk about me. That's the difference.
Yes.
And the simplicity of it is really awesome. And I deeply appreciate the work you've done. It's just amazing. Amazing.
Well, thank you. It's just such a rich opportunity to speak to all these amazing beings, and I do feel really blessed in that respect. So it's great. But it just seeing the way, people just kind of show up in a sequence, and the conversations like the one of Rika and Kylie Ann, Deborah, Ted, they've been instrumental in realization. So you can see the way the self's revealing itself to itself, because conversations seem to be required for quite a long time, but now most of the realizations are taking place as a result of just watching those conversations.
Exactly. The one thing I've thought, the one that the comment or the commentator was or was being introduced to me, was the concept that, well, Lester went through 100 days. How can it be this simple? And I promise you that if Lester was back, and it was back at that time, and you could show him this, he'd be fine.
Yes.
That's just my thing. Can't speak to
Well,
that.
yeah, I feel exactly the same. It's as though we each have a role to play, which is particular to that stage in which the self is revealing itself more effortlessly and more effectively. And the role that Lester was playing, he had certain things available to him at that time, which was a reflection of the way consciousness was unfolding at that time. And then it's because it's progressive and it's accelerating, then there's a point at which whatever you're doing is kind of superseded in it, but there's a more simple way, and we all have to recognize that. So but it's nice to know that that realization is so easily available now, but it's going to become even easier.
That's wonderful. The other thing that happens is I've been reluctant. I've lived by myself, and I've been reluctant to help other people, figuring that it's all been written, it's all been said. What can I contribute? What can this body contribute? And I've noticed since the realization, there's a stronger, maybe, nudge. Be available to people.
Yes.
If I can be of service to people, and that's refreshing.
Well, that's the key, really. As you say, being of service, because the world conditions us to be in service to individuality, but realization conditions us to be in service to the infinite self. And then the mind isn't questioning and saying, well, what do I have to offer? It's already been said, because it's the infinite being that knows how to utilize you in the most effective way. So it's whatever you have to offer, all the skills and knowledge you have, they're effortlessly available to you, and it's exactly those skills that are going to be beneficial in terms of the way you communicate with others.
I look forward to that. I look forward to help. There's just one quick story. A good friend of mine, who I've told her about guidance and all these different things, which just hadn't resonated. And ever since realization, for the first time in years, she said, I'm beginning to think there's more. And I went, bingo. This is like, so I gave her the Rika tape. I sent a copy of it over there, and that was beautiful. And she texted me last night and said, "Well, I really like the idea of the theme park and all these different rides that we go on." And that's just, I think it's like, and I know I'm saying I a lot, but what I'm saying it actually is awareness of presenting this to people.
Yes.
Not me. I mean, it
Yeah,
really is.
absolutely.
And but just for the sake of language, I get tired of saying this body, mind, and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So it's really beautiful. Life is beautiful.
Well, thanks so much, Will. That's amazing. And yeah, it's great that you've been able to, just describe your whole process. But the experiences you've had recently, they've just enabled you to align completely with your infinite nature. And that's, it's great. People will notice that. It's very tangible.
I hope that whatever words have come through are beneficial to people.
Yeah.
Give them a nudge one way or the other, but just help them realize how awesome they already are. That's sort of been my message most of my life. Thank you for having me on this program. It's really been beautiful.
Yeah, well, for me too. It was so. I was howling really when you were saying about the realization as a result of listening to the Rika conversation, and that you used to be a sports commentator. I thought that was great. That's the infinite being having a little joke on us somehow.
It was my first job out of college was
Oh,
in broadcasting, and I don't mean to brag. It's just the experience.
Mm.
I was the first student in the history of the University of Kansas to broadcast live a basketball game on the student radio station.
Mm.
Now, the student radio station had a range where if you plugged in your shaver at one of the dorms, you might be able to hear something. It was me talking to me, right? And so I got an award for that, and I'm on my way home, and this is in the 60s. And I'm driving a Volkswagen Beetle, and they have a sunroof. It was one of the first sunroofs ever, and you had to unwind it.
Mm.
So, and I always thought, that'd be a great escape hatch if anything happened. Wrong answer. So I'm driving home. I get into an accident with a dog, and I'm upside down on the Kansas Turnpike for about 160 feet. And I get out of the car through the passenger door. I ended up on my side. And I sat there, and I turned to absolutely nobody there. I mean, nobody physically there. Somebody was there.
Mm.
And I said, hey, thanks a lot. And then the commentator comes in and said, well, you need to say a prayer. Just did. Like, because I was out of my body watching the whole thing.
Yes.
It's just serendipity.
Mm.
And spontaneity is really awesome.
Mm. Perfect timing you have there.
Wasn't bad. It really wasn't bad. The awareness was presenting another opportunity.
Great.
So,
yeah. Well, thanks so much, Will. That's been awesome. Absolutely fantastic.
Thank you, David. I appreciate it very much.